again, thank you very much for joining and again for the kind invitation to be here today. Just as a previous, let's say, comment, I'm a biologist. So as you said, I'm a biologist, I'm an ecologist. And so it's a great pleasure for me to be with you, but I just hope that anything that I could say is really useful and you can somehow manage it. Anyway, you are welcome to interrupt me as much as you like, and I can, of course, stop and respond to any of your questions. So the whole idea, and when Emilia invited me to do this presentation, I'm sorry, because today I've been with some, I got a cold last week and it's still difficult. So I apologize for that. So the whole idea was to bring some, let's say, some narratives that could be useful in this particular community and context. I just hope so. Just as another previous comment, today we are just launching it's the first day of the COP28. I don't know if it's going to be something or not, but anyway, it's a moment to, let's hope that, again, that something will happen out of this. Another meeting, another potential compromise, we don't know, we never know. We are not confident, of course, because we are just keep having them and postponing the essential commitments. But anyhow, let's see if for the next 10, 12 days we'll have some outcome that is positive for the world. So I have my presentation somewhere in the computer, but I cannot see it. So just could you help me to find it? Because I don't see it. It must be hidden somewhere, but I cannot see it. Yeah, my presentation, because it was, but I cannot. Can you see it?
This is not your presentation.
So I presume you can see it. So when asked to give some insight into this general topic, as I said, I'm an ecologist, and I've been working in ecology for all my life, and in a very specific field of ecology. So I've done essentially working in the complexity of interactions between plant and microorganisms, and so the ecosystem functioning, let's say, and ecosystem services and ecosystem functioning. So that's the ecosystem approach I've been following for decades. And but in this specific situation, I thought I could go more into the ecological design or the ecological complexity that can be helpful in a way to think, to have an ecological perspective and thinking on, especially ecological thinking, how much of it can be useful for you, but I don't really know. So I've decided to bring some interdisciplinary insights and challenges in this ecological crisis. And in the last part, I intend at least to bring some of the interactions that I think that can be useful for a beneficial dialogue in sciences. This is I don't know if you can see it. This is one of a picture that was taken in Africa, in one of the huge, vast and big landscapes of the Central Africa, where that's how typically you see nature. You think, well, nature is somewhere in the, something that you just, you have somewhere in but essentially is far away from us, and somehow, the true nature, you can. That's how you can imagine. It's one way of imagining it. This is a very specific environment in Africa. I'm not going through, but just to have, because we are in living times in our century and where we do feel that something is happening with nature. We are losing nature every day, and maybe we don't think of it every day, but once in a while at least, we have this perception that nature is somehow escaping and we are losing it. And so these sort of environments or landscapes are more and more like part of our films, or but really far and far every day more. And this is very much so. I don't know what happened here with this. So it's something happened with this was supposed to be another slide, but it's probably, this is a Mac. I don't know what happened, I apologize. This was supposed to be another picture of nature in an urban spot so that you could see, but it's okay. Let's hope it's not happening with all the slides. If it's only this one, is okay. But the whole idea now was to present you another way of interpreting nature, and another way of seeing nature when you look outside and you have these landscapes. Even inside the city, you tend to go to visit parks and you have natural areas. You don't think exactly of them the same way, as they are not really. You don't think them as nature. So you see the trees outside unfortunately you don't see them as nature. You tend to see more than as ornamental. So yeah, you see the trees, you see some of the gardens, you go, sometimes you walk around and you like and you enjoy. But this is not exactly nature for none of us. But it's nature, but it's another way of, I'm sorry for the picture. So, but more and more, we have this, we love, we do say, and I'm sure that all of us, we love nature, but it's, we don't really understand what is how this feeling is really being translated and useful for your life and the way of living. That's the message I will try to go through for the next slides. It's a fact. We are living more and more at the very limit of our planet boundaries. And in science, we used to say, I'm used to stand up because I'm a teacher, so that's a different this way. No, it wouldn't be that. I think so. Oh, because of the YouTube. So, okay, so. This is a recent paper on what we call the planetary boundaries, and we used to say, to claim that we have to learn how to live and how to have our economies have to perform inside and within our planetary boundaries. And we are crossing many of these boundaries and in many aspects. And I can just, this was recently quantified, and the 6 boundaries that we have already, let's say, surpassed, and what is going to be the impact on this on our lives. And of course, you know, the nitrogen or phosphorus, for you probably, what is the nitrogen cycle? What is it useful? Is it relevant? But the nitrogen is the nitrogen cycle that is more, well, the pollution that we've been putting in the soils, especially to produce food. For example, if you compare an average soil in the Netherlands to an average soil in Africa, you have 200 times more nitrogen in Europe, in the Netherlands, that you have in the average in Africa. And that's one of the problems of our farming systems. We've been introducing a lot of nitrogen in the soils to produce much more, to increase our production, but this is really extremely harmful for the ecosystem and for our health. And it's in the origin of most of our cancers nowadays is the impact of nitrogen. So this is one matter that we do have to solve, and this is not going to be solved unless we change the farming systems and the way how we've been producing food. But that's a topic that we could discuss further, but just to let you know, another boundary that we've been crossing, it's what we call the biosphere integrity, meaning the loss of species and the loss of diversity and the increase of invasive species, exotic species that are being spread, and we are suffering the impact of this. But I don't go deeply into those. And of course, climate change. And in climate change, we know that we are really going much further than we should, and we have this problem of the impact and the need to mitigate and adapt to climate change. So climate change is going to be certainly one of the topics that we are going to discuss, because of course that's one of the frontiers where we can really be much more interdisciplinary, and the design can be very helpful to go into the mitigation and adaptation to climate change. So, and we account very much on your community to come up with solutions that can help us mitigating and adapting. So climate change is going to be one of the topics. I just leave all the others because I don't have time. Novel entities is also an interesting, because you are going to be also challenged by these novel entities, novel ecosystems, because even though you might not realize, you are being affected and influenced by what you see, the nature you understand. Doesn't matter if it's the nature that you see outside of the window when you live in the city, or the nature you visit when you go to a natural park in Brazil or in Africa, wherever you go. But you are also going to be challenged by these novel ecosystems that we are actually building. Okay, so the planetary boundaries. So that's not, we call this more and more that we are facing a transition from the Holocene, which was a geological period of the story, to what we call the Anthropocene. The Anthropocene, and why, and in general, all sciences, all communities are taking this word, is living in the Anthropocene. Anthropocene is a transversal kind of wording. And I think that, why do we call it the Anthropocene? Well, basically because we have transformed the planet so that it serves us. That's very much the kind of narrative that the designers understand. So we transform the planet so that the planet is responding to our needs, human needs. And that's very much like that. If you this is just an example, a figure where you can easily see it. In terms of mammals, which is one of the group of organisms that we have in the planet, mammals, we are a mammal. In terms of mammals, 30% of the biomass in the planet, 36% of the biomass in the earth is out of humans. And 60% is livestock. That means the food, the meat that humans consume every day. And then we live in the planet. Left is 4% that we live for wild mammals. That's the present situation in the planet. So you can see most of it, 96% of the biomass, either are humans or the meat, the livestock that we raise to feed us. That we leave this 4% for the wild fauna, wild mammals. And if you go for birds, it's more or less the same. So you have 70% of the birds are poultry, so they are also raised to feed us. And then you have 30% only are wild. So the transformation of the planet is clear. Maybe we don't perceive it as much as we should, but it's really a huge transformation that is ongoing. And of course, if we go to other signs that I don't think you can read it, but if you go there, the last 200 years, there are huge examples of and fingerprints of the transformation that we have done in the planet. I'm not going into all of them, of course, but these are just examples of these fingerprints. And typically we go for the population demography, and we understand, of course, that the world population is hitting this 8 billion, as you know. But now we expect the growth to slow down. We don't know. This is something that we expect. But of course, and we also know that this population is not increasing in all geographies at the same rate. But this is what we have. And typically we say, well, we have to go on because we have to feed all this increment of population that we have every day. Meaning that as much as as more food is needed, what we have typically done is we have transformed the land to respond to this increasing increment of food that is needed to feed the world population. It's not exactly like that, but that's the kind of interpretation we have. But we don't even, for example, you probably don't realize that this is again something where the designers can help. In Europe, we waste 1/3 of the food that we produce. We waste, just simply waste. It's 1/3. It shouldn't be like that. Maybe you can help on that. Maybe you can, elaborate on the kind of boxes and cases and trays that people can use, and then maybe then they can prevent if they have access to it. It was the same thing with the plastics. We didn't have plastics 100 years ago, and now we simply cannot get rid of them. Another challenge is going to be when we have this spread of population at the same time. Most of 70-80% of the population worldwide lives 50 kilometers within the coast, from the coast. So we are essentially living close to the coast. That's where we prefer to live. And we are building cities and cities and cities around the coastal zone, meaning that the impact that we will have in these coastal areas is going to be more and more evident. And at the same time, also the impact of climate change is going to be well perceived in these regions. So where we have most of the new cities, and that's also where we do know that the impact of climate change is going to be bigger. And at the same time, this is going to increase the impact of our life and our daily life in the trophic systems, so in the biology of the ecosystems of the coastal areas and the sea. And of course, you have the same. You know that here in Malaga, the impact of this, and we could go across it. So this is another. The world is really showing a new let's say spread of not spread configuration, let's say. So at the same time, just to let you know what is happening with nature in this new world. Most of our biodiversity hotspots, so that when we have most of our biodiversity is also in these areas. So we are going to have an increasing overlap in between the locations and where population likes and prefers to live and the biodiversity hotspots. So that's not strange to see that the loss of biodiversity is happening, because the land use change is exactly where we have most of our biodiversity. And I'm not going through, but of course you know what is happening, and where we are mostly concerned in terms of the future of the planet is on tropical forests. We have tropical forests in here, in the region of the big Amazon basin. We have them in Africa, and we have them in Southeast Asia. That's where we have, but most of our, let's say, most productive tropical forests are in South America. But as you know, we are losing them, and the loss of the tropical forest is going to have a tremendous impact in our daily lives. We don't imagine it yet. Another big change in scenario that I would like to bring is, and it's something that even the scientific community in general is not yet perceiving the impact of this change, but we do understand it in Spain. We call it in Spain España vaciada, creo que es España vacía, España vaciada. In Portugal, we have also 70% of the Portuguese population living within 50 kilometers of the coast, and then we have 1/3 of the country living in 2/3 of the land. And but this is a general trend that is going to have some sort of impact in our new territories that are going to be built, and we don't exactly understand what is going to be the impact in terms of farming systems, forests, risks in general, the risk of fire, the risk of losing our let's say, I'm sorry, but this is not my best shape today. the risk of change the way how we live our daily life. So this is another scenario that we don't perceive yet what is going to happen, but it is also important to. But of course, the major challenge, the ecological major challenge besides biodiversity is climate change, and we are discussing it at the COP28 nowadays. And we got a new report of the United Nations in the 20th of November. You can see that we are far away from getting from accomplishing the targets of the Paris Agreement. So we are suffering this global warming impact over the last, especially the last 50, 60 years. The increment is amazing. I mean, I've been in the 90s. I was working with CO2 sequestration by Mediterranean ecosystems in Stanford in the 90s, and the average of carbon that we had in the atmosphere then was 370. I was working with 370, and now we have 440 as an average of CO2. So over my life, I've assisted to an increase of almost 20-25% of the carbon that is in the atmosphere. So the impact in terms of the global warming, it will have a tremendous impact in our life. And even if we accomplish the target of Paris, which is not it's far away from being accepted, as you know, 1.5, it's still the discussion. But according to this recent report of the United Nations, achieving 1.5, which is the best scenario we can get, we have 14% of chances to get it now. 14% of chances. So this is going to be really difficult. So what is probably going to happen is that we go for 2.5, meaning twice the temperature that we have nowadays, twice the impact. So now we are already 1.2, 1.3. So we are almost into the target of the Paris Agreement. We know that the chances to cross it are much bigger. So, and we know that. But in spite of this, none of the G20 countries has performed according to what they compromised. None of them. And in spite of this, we are fighting to have some sort of agreement that really allows us at least to keep in the low range of the changes that are really expected. So 2.5, 2.9 is the last target that the report, the most recent report of the United Nations. So we will have really a big impact in our lives, and we do need to adapt to this big change that's going to happen. I just show a few scenarios. So climate change is going really to go through all the century, and even if we manage to keep on the safe side, let's say 1.5, which is, as I said, very, very difficult. But even if we keep it, the warming in below this value, the climate system of the planet is not going to be stabilized this century. So we won't stabilize the climate system, meaning that the impacts that we are facing, we will keep facing them. So we do have to adjust. Of course, not all of us have the same facilities, the same tools, the same means to adjust, as you know. Many parts of the world don't have the capacity and the means to adjust, but some others, and that's another fight. I mean, we should do our best to have a more just transition, which is really seems to be far away from being a reality, because the effort, the political effort that is needed is not exactly what we have nowadays. So, but this is a central, and this is going to be central, in my opinion, adaptation to climate change, because I don't think that is up to you. I mean, in general, to go. Mitigation is also a process, of course, but adaptation is going to be central, and I think that ecological design can be very, very helpful in a way how we do it, or at least perspective. On the other hand, besides the climate crisis, which is, people tend to say you shouldn't be, not in my case, I tend to be very optimistic in general, but I gave up of this discussion of being optimistic or pessimistic. This is a nonsense. We just have to think that we are players of a world, and if we want it to be different, we have to be part of it, and we have to play with the instruments we have, and we have to be active. Another crisis that we are not perceiving, unfortunately, is the biodiversity crisis, and I want to bring it because we should be all actors in the protection of biodiversity. We are losing biodiversity every day at a rate that is somewhere between 100 and 1,000 times more than it should be the regular rate of extinction of species. So, and some organisms are, of course, suffering more than others, and you can imagine why, because it's normal that you lose more amphibians, because amphibians need water to accomplish their life cycle. So if we have less water, less wetlands, if we are destroying their habitats, of course, we have less amphibians. And you can ask, but does it matter? Do we need them? Do you need frogs, and do you need them? The impact, the perception is also changing, because even we understand more and more, and science is working on that. We don't know much. Biodiversity, we have science, the estimations of science is that we have about 10 million species, different species, 10 million. We know about 2 million, science. And when I say we know, and many of them, we know, we did identify somewhere, but they may be inside of a museum, and we didn't look at them anymore. We found them 100 years ago, and they are just waiting for us to go again and to read them and to get to know a bit more of them. But we know about 2 million, and 90% of them are insects. Insects are amazing, are an amazing group of organisms. You can say, why do we need insects? I mean, they are boring, they beat us, and they transmit diseases, and sometimes we get sick, and we cannot go to the tropics because they are boring, yeah? But insects can also play and give us a lot of services that are essential. And one of the services that are essential, and maybe this is also a challenge for designers, is pollination. Without pollination, we don't have most of our crops depend on the pollination. Without pollination, we don't have food. And some things are really because we don't care. We like to live in the city, but we don't care if the nature that we bring to the city is useful or not for the insects. We know that we like it. It's enough. It's ornamental. We like this flower. We like the size of the tree. We like it, or some landscape architects liked it, or somewhere in the municipality they decided so. But we don't really understand why did you choose it. But we have, these choices are going to be more and more relevant. Because if we don't care, if we pretend, and if we want to live in the city, and we want to bring the good and service that we need for our daily lives, then we have to bring the ecosystem and to understand the complexity of the ecosystem so that it can perform in a way that continues to be good for us and producing and giving us the goods and services that we depend on. We understand, for example, that we have to bring trees to the city because the trees are giving us oxygen and they are taking the carbon, and it's true. Sometimes we even realize that trees are useful in the city because of the water cycle. Because we need water, and we want to keep water cycling in the city, the flow of the biogeochemical cycles. But would our gardens also be important for amphibians, for insects? Why not? is just the perception of nature. Nature is not anymore far away in the natural part preserved for us for the future. It's not anymore there. Nature has to be perceived all over. It's part of our system. We are part of nature. And we clearly understood that when we crossed the pandemic situation, and we thought, well, finally, we are vulnerable as much as any other species. Any virus can get us. Yes, we are part of the nature. 90% of our composition, of our biology, is not ours. It's from other species that live with us, that coexist with us. 90% of our DNA is not ours. It's not by chance that our doctors nowadays say, well, let's care for our microbiome. Because many of our diseases come out of this unbalance. And now we understand that we have to care for the food we eat. Because we want to live well, longer, but well, healthy. This is part of our healthier lives, is another message. But to have healthier lives, we need to care for nature. And our relationship with nature has to change. And this understanding that we are not, that we are just a species that came up in the top of the pyramid, and we are the very end of the evolution. So after us, nothing. We are the best. We have conquered the top of the evolution. Biologists are a bit responsible for that, unfortunately. This is wrong, totally wrong. We are a species. You know, if we have a life in the planet in a book, the book would have 1,000 pages. And humans come in the last paragraph of the last page. Plants arrived in land 400 million years ago. We as a species, we have 200,000, 300,000 years. You know. So, we have to understand that nature is really much more than ornamental. Just more a very funny place where we go and have fun and enjoy and play football or something like that, or play golf, I don't know. It's much more than that. Nature is essential for our survival. So what we are losing, and when we lose many other things that we don't perceive in the beginning. For example, in amphibians. The loss of amphibians is tremendous in Central America. Many countries of Central America are facing a disastrous extinction of amphibians. And it has already been noticed that when we lose these amphibians, for example, we lose the animals that feed in insects. And now we are seeing an increment of some of the diseases that are being transmitted by these vectors. Because they don't have any more, they are not the trophic chain that used to be useful to balance this process. And this kind of impact, we are going to face it generally. For example, this pandemic, this last virus, we know, I mean, science knew that we will have this kind of pandemics and we will face many others in the future. And one of the reasons why we are going to have more, it's very simple. It's because we are destroying, killing tropical forests. When we kill one tropical tree, is an ecosystem. One tree is an ecosystem in itself. You cannot imagine the number of species that lives in the tree, in the root system, inside the tree, in the leaves, the canopy. Imagine a forest. Imagine a tropical forest. And when we destroy tropical forests, one of the organisms that we are losing together with the cut of the tree is the fungi that live in the tree. Fungi are an amazing group of organisms which we know very, very few. We know like science knows maybe 2% of the total number of fungi that may exist in the planet, maybe 2%. And imagine all of them, almost all of them, in one way or the other, have been useful for us. Many of the antibiotics, medicines, pharmaceutical that we know, they come from these organisms. And they are very, very clever. And they are with us for a long, long, long time. Actually, the trees understood from the beginning that if they collaborate with these fungi, they would be much more successful. And they are. They have this collaboration with the fungi. That's why they are successful. Without them, they couldn't be as much as they are. So collaboration is another message of nature. Collaborating, doing in synergy, in partnership, these are stronger messages that nature gives us every day. When we disrupt these collaborations, these networks, like these networks of fungi, we are watching this in all the Mediterranean areas. What is happening to our oaklands? Our oaks are dying in Spain, in Portugal, in many other places. Our oaks are dying, and they are dying because they are becoming more susceptible to diseases. They are getting sick. Most of our trees in the cities are sick because we don't protect them. We don't care if they have enough water, if they have enough room to extend their roots. We don't care for many things. But this has to change, the relationship with nature. That's the most important message I'd like to bring today. Well, and so just, I have no idea if I'm probably extending too much, I'm sorry. So what you call it, nature contributions to people. And this is a concept that is more and more the International Platform for Biodiversity Ecosystem Services, the IPBES. It's comparable to the IPCC of the United Nations. I'm representing Portugal in this platform. And this is a concept that we use, and it's very useful for the designers, I think. If you could capture these nature contributions to people narrative, you would do a lot for change, this, because we have to make people understand, the communities understand that indigenous communities realize this very much. If you go to any of the indigenous communities of the tropical forests of the Amazon, or even in Africa, they do understand the nature contributions to people, and they keep telling us, don't destroy, because you are destroying nature contributions to people. Nature is giving us a lot of services and goods. So this could be very nice, because in nature we have many different services, from climate regulation, air quality, pollination, seed dispersal, habitat, soil, identity, learning and inspiration, of course, a lot of this. This is a very strong narrative, if we could capture it and inscribe it in our, because then of course we have what is happening in terms of, we are losing a lot of these nature contributions to people. I don't go through them. This was just an idea. Why biodiversity matters? I really think that the strongest message I can bring you is biodiversity and nature. We have to perceive it and include it in our messages, because you can play a very strong role helping us to bring up this message. It's not easy. Biologists have not been very successful transmitting the need to preserve nature and biodiversity. We have not been very successful. And we for many reasons, this is just an example, I don't have time to go through, but it's now being finally, but it's not for the best reasons, but we finally understand that nature is essential, is the, let's say, natural capital, is the capital of the 21st century. The richer the country, the richer the community, the more natural capital it may preserve. And that's not by chance that the ecological agreement, the European Ecological Agreement, is based on this idea of bringing back into our lives, bringing nature back into our lives. That's European Green Deal. And that's why we now are discussing, and just last week we got the first law of nature restoration. So it's going to be a strong agenda because we have to restore nature. And again, this is a very strong language for the designers. We have to restore it. And because more and more we know that is the foundation of a sustainable economy. So water, food, shelter, energy are building blocks of the new economic system. We need to align this, the economy and environment systems. And of course, we have to mainstream environmental values, ecosystem services, and whether I'll just go very briefly into the nature-based solutions, where, of course, your narrative can be very supportive of these nature-based solutions. It was going to be the strong program of the climate change adaptation. I was a member of, I don't know if you, I've been a member of the mission board of the European Union for climate change adaptation and societal transformation. That's one of the missions of the European Commission. And I'm also a member of the advisory board of the the European Climate Risk Assessment that is going to be out the beginning of 2024. And I mean, all the European fundings and initiatives, if we manage to survive it as a political entity, I hope so, we will have a strong investment more and more, because there's no other way in the change of aligning our economical system with in mainstream environmental values. So that's where we go now, and that's the mitigation of climate change. It will go through all the systems, agriculture, buildings, transport, energy, industry. So this mitigation process for climate change is going to impact all societies in many aspects. I'm not going through, obviously, but for you specifically, I think that the strong narrative that you can have is nature-based solutions. So I'm sorry, I forgot to, this is in Portuguese, but these are solutions inspired in nature that bring environmental benefits, social and economical benefits, and promote resilience. We want to achieve resilience to climate change, and nature-based solutions are going to be part of it. Doesn't matter where you are, if it's there are plenty examples even for urban areas. This is not exclusive of rural territories. This is also applied, and is going to be applied in all the environmental and urban areas as well. So nature-based solutions is our strongest narrative that I think incorporates, the one that better incorporates the ecological knowledge and your expertise, bringing up the translation of this knowledge into the cities, communities, societies, and the citizens, and commit the citizens with these solutions. And meaning citizens in general, also the companies and the economical activities. So NBS, we call it, nature-based solutions, are the narrative of the present and the future, certainly. This is going to be applied also, as I said, in cities, so that you can see how you can lower energy costs, create jobs, reduce noise pollution, build the resilience to climate change, keep cities cool. These are, of course, humans chose cities to live in, and that's what we have also to change. Another agenda that is going to be also very powerful in bringing this ecological, let's say, the ecological transition, it's going to be the health agenda. So that goes together more and more. And I'm happy to see that there's some competent action in all these disciplines, and this is from the WHO Council on Economics and Health for All, and you see that even these thinkers of the health agenda more and more understand that we have to live and learn to build even the health agenda within the planetary and ecological boundaries. And this is very, very important. So our health condition is going to be also, and that's, you may have already heard about what we call the One Health agenda. I prefer planetary agenda because I want to bring the environment, but One Health is like spread, and One Health is going to be, of course, inspirational because it's going to be understood within the planetary and ecological boundaries, the ones that I show in the beginning. So the nature positive activities and resilience building should be at the center of the sustainable economy. And that's what we are still in the process of learning how to do it. Even we will need the private sector, all the states, even all the targets we have in all the international compromises, all international agreements. We won't achieve it without some partnerships in between the private sector and the public sector. There's not much enough money in the state sector to produce the change, the systemic change that we need to transform the world and to do this, what we call the ecological transition. So, and that's just a few messages specifically for the design. We are switching the renewable energy, of course. That's the energy transition that is happening. As you know, it's going to be a very strong discussion in the COP28 because we are going into the renewable energies, and I'm happy to see, for example, in Portugal and Spain, we are expecting to have 80% of our energy coming out of renewables this decade. So it's a huge achievement if we get there. 80% is huge. So we are investing more and more in renewables, and I know, in spite of the different conflicts, this is the time also for conflicts with nature, because we see nature disappearing, and at the same time we see that we're bringing these green narratives, and many of them are against nature because you have to expand, solar panels, photovoltaic, eolics offshore. You have to expand, at the same time preserve nature. This is a conflicting, of course, situation. That's why we need the tools that bring the citizens to the process. And you are one of the best players in this connection. Not many can connect as good as you can in between, the transition and the process that is ongoing in the economical system and the participation of the citizen. And so we have really to go into renewables. Let's see if part of this COP28, when I would say that we have some sort of success, if we manage to bring money to the fund that is going to support the transition to renewables in countries that don't have money and have budget, which budgets are very much depending on the national debts. So this is going to be a challenge, and I do hope, I will say that we will succeed this COP if we truly have budget, for these countries of Africa, for example. Do you realize that whole African continent, they produce only 4% of the fossil emissions? The whole African continent, 4% of the fossil emissions. So when they claim, well, why should we pay? Why should we pay if we are just? They have some arguments. But we all have to go into this transition. There's no other way. So I just hope that we can, and of course it's critical that we transform how we design, make and use products and food. The food system is going to be central. The food system that we managed to build after the Second World War is totally absurd. So we have half of the world living with sicknesses and diseases out of too much food, diabetes and so on, and we have part of the world without enough food. That's what we managed to build, and we don't even know what we eat. So we have managed to disconnect totally the production of the consumption, which is, maybe you were also artists in that change, but we have to reconnect the production and the consumption of the food system. But there's another, of course, not go to. We need a circular economy, as you know, and we have to stop, the loss of biodiversity. So I know that this could be your agenda, or at least one of them, and of course the ecological thinking that is probably more connected to you is what we call the circular economy, or the circle bioeconomy, of course, and meaning that all this complex of components of the system, of the ecosystem, have to be challenged by your narrative. And so you have to capture each of them and make them working. Of course, I'm not going into them. I would love to, because that's the kind of thinking that I like to make, and I like to think in this holistic way, but it's truly challenging because it's very, very demanding. Anyway, so I think I'm taking too much time, I'm sorry. So we have to integrate sustainable principles. This is a kind of also narrative that you understand. Of course, to influence behaviors, shape systems, and inspire collective commitment to a more sustainable and resilient future. That could be a final key message. And then you go to the key community systems. I would say that you could also see the key community system as an approach, another approach, and go through I think some of these pillars, and go from the community, social infrastructure, health and well-being, nature, biodiversity, ecosystem services, water, and landscapes. Meaning, then, just going more deeper into them, of course, and I know that you are already discussing the regenerative agenda. The regenerative agenda is going across all the fields of science. So certainly we know that we have to regenerate soils. Just look outside and have the landscape you have here. We have to regenerate them. They don't have enough organic matter. One of these days you cannot produce anything out of it. So more and more, that's the kind of agenda we need. And so we all go through it. So I don't have. And also, we have to stop the stupid things. That's the most easy thing. Stop the stupid things. Just stop doing stupid things. It's not demanding much, no? Because, this is the kind of... I don't understand why we do this. That's because we don't see this as a being, as part of our life system. That's a big change. We have to approach nature as part of a living system of which we are part. That's a very stupid thing that we really do, and of course, but at the same time we are learning, and I'm happy to see, of course, that instead of this, we are able of doing this, and this is a huge change. When we landscape like this, or when you landscape, all of us understand very easily. And it's not much. And then people say, well, but it needs much. No. If you do this way, you preserve the water system or the fresh water. You have better air. You can enjoy. Whereas if you have this, you are only thinking that you are serving, the traffic. And in fact, in the end, you are not. So we have, and very often, we could do differently. Sometimes you tend to say, well, it's much expensive. No. What is expensive is this, is not this. So we can do it. And the landscape, I would say, is another. So, and we did it even in conditions, this is the city of New York. They are all proud and well, and we are all proud, and we like and enjoy to go into the Central Park and enjoy. It was more than 100 years ago. They understood that you should keep it. And not only this, the city of New York, I don't know if you are aware of it, the city of New York decided, a few decades ago, to preserve a mountain side that is out in the outskirts of the city because of the water. And they decided together that they shouldn't build anything over this mountain because they would like to preserve it for the future and for the water. And they managed to do it. It was a very clever decision then. And they have water because of that. So sometimes it's just And this is, of course, no one is going to destroy this, and maybe the trees are going to die. It's happening already in Boston, for example. 40% of the trees in Boston are in a very, very bad condition, and probably they're going to die. Because very simple things. It's worth to understand the biology. One very simple thing that happens in the cities, trees, they have this relationship with fungi, meaning that they need phosphorus. They need phosphorus. But in the cities, more and more, because of our pets, imagine, because of our pets pee in the roots of the tree, and then they give it nitrogen. And when they give it, the accumulation of nitrogen in the soils, the very tiny piece of soil that we leave for the tree, because typically we have a very tiny portion of soil that the trees, and they have the input of nitrogen, can change the balance between nitrogen and phosphorus. This is biology. And when we do this, the tree, instead of having the connection with the fungi, it's avoiding it. And so we are simplifying the trophic chain of the soil just by this, that we don't even realize. But that's life, the complexity of life. But respecting the different beings, if we want them to live with us, we don't have to cut them in many situations because they are sick. We have to care for them. The same as we do to our relatives. I expect all of us to do it. It's the same thing. If we want them to live with us. Okay, so change is coming anyway. So I like it to do by design and not by disaster. That would be my last message. Okay? Okay. Thank you very much.